The youth of Pakistan, a nation blessed with immense potential, are its greatest asset, and their value can never truly be overstated. However, due to their lack of knowledge about the basic principles of life and psychological guidelines, they sometimes fall behind in the race of life. Nowadays, everyone tries to act like a physician themselves and showcase their knowledge, which leads young people to acquire so called wisdom from the less intelligent and sometimes ruin their lives. It is necessary for today's youth to become familiar with the basic principles of psychology and understand their mind and its psychology so that no difficulty arises at any turn in life. Here we mention 10 such interesting but practical psychological principles for practical life so that the youth of the nation can benefit fully from them and shape their lives in a better mold. The first psychological principle is not to try to be happy. When you force yourself to be happy, the mind resists. Allowing yourself to be sad naturally brings the brain toward balance. An example of this is that many young people, upon seeing smiling pictures of others on social media, feel they are falling behind. They are not genuinely happy, but try to appear happy, which increases inner anxiety. Psychological studies confirm that suppressed emotions increase mental stress. Accepting sadness allows the brain to treat it as a normal state and restores emotional balance. Happiness is a natural state and cannot be forcibly created. The second psychological principle is to accept failure instead of avoiding it. Those who are not afraid of failure are more confident. Treating failure as normal reduces fear and enhances the learning process. An example of this is that many young people, after failing an exam or interview, start to consider themselves incapable, whereas some work on their mistakes after the failure and perform better next time. Recognizing failure as part of growth prevents fear from taking over and opens the mind to new possibilities. The third psychological principle is to acknowledge oneself as weak. A person who acknowledges their weakness is mentally stronger because they do not have to fight a battle to prove themselves. An example of this is that young people who always try to appear strong often face internal pressure. In contrast, those who openly admit their difficulties or weaknesses appear calmer and more confident. Accepting one's weaknesses reduces mental burden and saves energy, promoting realistic self assessment. The fourth psychological principle is not to look for an immediate solution to every problem. Sometimes giving a problem time proves more effective than overthinking it. The brain subconsciously finds a solution. An example of this is that young people who rush career decisions often regret it later, whereas those who take time make more satisfying and better decisions. Allowing time for reflection helps the subconscious organize information, leading to wiser decisions and reduced stress. The fifth psychological principle is not to fear considering yourself inferior to others. This feeling often pushes a person toward improvement, provided it is transformed into motivation rather than envy. An example of this is that feeling inferior after seeing a successful friend is normal. Some youth become discouraged, while others use that feeling as a foundation for hard work. Constructive recognition of inferiority encourages self accountability, which is essential for growth. The sixth psychological principle is to feel your fear instead of fighting it. Facing fear instead of suppressing it diminishes its power. Fear that is acknowledged gradually diminishes. An example of this is that a young person afraid of public speaking gains confidence over time by acknowledging the fear and trying to speak. Suppressed fear becomes stronger in the subconscious, whereas acknowledged fear gradually loses its intensity. The seventh psychological principle is to stop trying to please everyone. When you stop chasing others' approval, mental peace naturally arises. An example of this is that young people who sacrifice themselves for every relationship often feel loneliness and exhaustion in the end. Releasing the constant need for approval preserves mental energy and helps maintain one's true identity. The eighth psychological principle is not to challenge the thought of feeling inadequate. Living with this thought for a while teaches that a person determines their own value, not others' opinions. An example of this is that many youth consider themselves not good enough, but this very feeling motivates them to learn and improve. Accepting inadequacy encourages growth, whereas believing oneself perfect leads to stagnation. The ninth psychological principle is not to insist on always thinking positively. Accepting negative thoughts makes the mind realistic, and this realism forms the basis of strong decisions. An example of this is that young people who delay dealing with issues by saying everything will be fine fail to solve problems. Acknowledging negative emotions provides awareness and lays the groundwork for meaningful improvement. The 10th psychological principle is to stop trying to control life completely. When a person gives up the desire to control everything, anxiety decreases and mental freedom increases. An example of this is that young people who want to control every outcome feel extreme pressure even with minor failures. Letting go of the need for total control brings peace, while managing one's responses remains fully achievable.